Keanu Reeves has a comic. Some of you probably have already seen this Kickstarter started by Boom Studios. Keanu Reeves has a comic, guys! From what I know, this is actually the first comic that he's written, and of course he didn't do it alone. He had a co-writer. Let me see, New York Times best-selling. Every time I see New York Times best-selling author, I always just think of all those authors that wrote those young adult graphic novels. I don't know why young adult stories are always so bad. Don't teenagers deserve better? The comic is called BRZRKR, kind of like the manga Berserk, only spelled funny. I don't know, some people like it when they take out the vowels and try to make it like a code that you have to sound out verbally to understand what the title is. You know, you gotta shine your UV light on it to find out the secrets. But really, all it does is make me read the title slower while sounding it out in my head like a child learning to read for the first time. And I will tell you, I don't like reading slower. I don't like those little word puzzles that much. Not a huge fan of the no vowels, although I know that that's definitely something. Fatal came out this year too, and it was like the same thing. Clint was doing that. It was kind of funny. It's just like everyone's taking out the vowels of their title to make it harder to read. So now, from what I understand, Keanu is the one who came up with the idea behind the comic. So he had the concept in mind, but for some reason, he describes the comic as though he's never read it. And I'm thinking to myself, you came up with the idea for this story.
Great drawings, colors. Great story, it's got action, has a little romance, and it's about something.
Alright, it's got good art, it's got good story, it's got like action and romance, and it's about something. Like the most vague description of your comic that you came up with. So then they like just put up the summary of the comic on the screen, and I'm thinking to myself, why didn't Keanu just read this out loud? And then further into the video, he starts talking a little bit more in depth, talking about the main character and what mentally he's going through. So I'll just read out the summary for you guys. The man known only as BRZRKR, but for some reason it's spelled normally here, is half mortal and half god, cursed and compelled to violence, even at the sacrifice of his sanity. But after wandering the world for centuries, BRZRKR may have finally found a refuge, working for the US government to fight the battles too violent and too dangerous for anyone else. In exchange, BRZRKR will be granted the one thing he desires, the truth about his endless blood-soaked existence and how to end it. So the United States government knows the secret to how to end his violence, or maybe how to kill him. Maybe the idea is, oh, the only way to end my violence is to end myself. Also don't know why the US government would know anything about the gods and the mortals boinking each other. But it does sound like an interesting story, and it looks like they have a lot of cool perks for this whole thing. They had signed copies by Keanu Reeves. Of course, those sold out pretty quick, I imagine. People love the shit out of Keanu Reeves, and he's a really charming person, which I think is probably one of the reasons why people just enjoyed the video of him talking, even if he was rambling a little bit. And this project has gotten up to $474,000 so far. On the first day alone, it made $300,000. Can you blame them? But believe it or not, there is a bit of controversy behind this Kickstarter. And I use the word controversy very lightly because it's not really controversial, but basically, Twitter. Need I say more? There were some people very critical of Boom Studios and who were angry at them for starting a Kickstarter. I've bookmarked a few tweets here, and here's one person who was talking about the page rates that they got at Boom Studio. With Boom doing a damn Kickstarter like they're not a massive company with huge pre-existing following and Netflix deals, it's a great time to remind everyone I was paid $20 US per inked page during my run on Giant Days. 20. I am so furious. And now they don't even want to pay for their own publications. The calculation, I'm disgusted. When they offered me $20 a page over Easter weekend to do a half issue of pickup inks because their inker was having problems with a RSI, wonder why, I ended my relationship with them, but they just keep putting their foot in it. I do need you to know that I am absolutely cackling at the idea of a major comic book pub which has deals with Netflix and Universal hopping onto Kickstarter to fund their Keanu Reeves written comic book. For some reason, page rate increases aren't in the stretch goals. Weird. And of course, your favorite person in the world tweeted out, if a publisher won't invest the money in a book by one of the biggest movie stars right now, imagine how little they'll invest in a book by a creator trying to make a name for themselves. I added the for themselves at the end. So people seem to be under the impression that Boom Studios is using this money to make the comic itself, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like they already had this project being funded and paid for, but decided to do a Kickstarter for pre-orders. Now, most people will associate Kickstarter with funding projects that don't have any funding, but there are multiple comic projects that, have been funded, have been made, and they'll just make these campaigns for people to get it first, to pay a little extra to get to read it first, or to get little special perks as they have in this Kickstarter. Now, some might ask, why did they want pre-orders? Part of the reason could be because of the pandemic. There's not a lot of people who are going to comic book shops. Some comic book shops aren't even open. Some of them are shutting down. So it could be an easier way to make money off of this book by putting it online for people to pre-order. But even more so, the idea of putting Keanu Reeves' name on this book and selling it as his idea, his concepts. The point is to turn people on to comic books who were not previously comic book fans. The point is to get Keanu Reeves fans into the comic book field. People who are not comic book fans will not go into a comic book shop and would not otherwise be able to find this book. People who are not comic book fans would not go out of their way to find this book. So doing a campaign to offer more perks and, signed copies and all the other stuff that they have on this tier list is probably a better idea to advertise this book than it would be to just release it into comic book shops. And I'm sure a lot of people will be speculating, how much money Keanu Reeves made off of this book. I'm not gonna claim like I know, but I'm sure he made a good bit. I mean, they probably should pay him a good bit because he probably could have gone to any publisher with this comic book idea and they would have been like, yeah, we'll do it. Oh, Keanu Reeves wants to write a comic book with our publisher? Yeah! Because, like I said before, just having his name on the book will open you up to a new audience that you didn't have before, a new audience of Keanu Reeves fans. And it has a lot of potential to make a lot of money. As we've seen, it's already made a lot of money. If you wanted to claim like Boom Studios doesn't deserve this money because they don't offer good page rates, you could literally argue that with basically any comic that they make that makes money. I don't really judge people for choosing to work at low costs. I think that's their own decision. There are obviously a lot of jobs where I think people should get paid more, but if people are okay with doing a comic at a low page rate, then that's their decision. And if they want to work for more, then they can always find a job somewhere else. Given that they are a good artist who's good at marketing themselves and good at looking for work, they can go to an employer that pays better. But if you don't value your art at $20 a page, you don't have to do that job. You already know that there's a huge surge of artists and comic creators who are going the indie route and are using these campaigns to fund their own comics, to actually fund their own comics from scratch. This campaign is for pre-orders. This is for people who want it early and want some extras. This is for people who probably would not normally be at a comic book shop or probably would not normally know that this comic book existed. And by this campaign succeeding, no money is being taken from you. But definitely let me know what you think of the whole thing. What do you think about Keanu Reeves' new comic? What do you think about Boom Studios publishing it? What do you think about the complaints on Boom Studios and their page rates, and the criticism of them doing a campaign? Any and all thoughts you have, leave them down below in the comment section. That's what it's there for. I'll see you guys next time.